Well, I must say we have a very exciting proposal.
A video game based on your many adventures.
What would you call it?
Iggy's World.
The Indomitable Spike.
The Super Koopa Cousins.
Hello and welcome to Philosophize, where we're about to talk about Super Mario Brothers.
Hi there, Matt. How are you doing, mate?
I'm good. You all right?
Yeah, I am. I'm looking forward to talking about this film.
That surprises me. I mainly picked it to punish you.
Oh, did you now?
Yeah.
Well, you'd be happy to know after my first watch, I was indeed punished. I thought to myself, I didn't miss anything in 1993. I've got to say, though, as a slight aside, I went to Stockholm once. And
a slight aside.
We'll get back to things. I went to Stockholm once. I didn't really like it, but I hung around enough and I got to like the place. In other words, I got Stockholm syndrome in Stockholm. And having watched this film 3 times now, I kind of like it. And I can only put it down to a kind of quasi-equivalence of Stockholm syndrome, of watching it, thinking about it, getting interested in some of the things that are going on and ending up liking it at the back end. So I am actually now telling you I really liked it.
That's deeply disturbing.
A long, long time ago, the Earth was ruled by dinosaurs. They were big, so not a lot of people went around hassling them. Actually, no people went around hassling them because there weren't any people yet. Just the first tiny mammals. Basically, life was good.
You know, it just don't get no better than this.
Yeah. Then something happened. A giant meteorite struck the Earth. Goodbye, dinosaurs. But what if the dinosaurs weren't all destroyed? What if the impact of that meteorite created a parallel dimension where the dinosaurs continue to thrive and evolve into intelligent, vicious, aggressive beings? Just like us. And hey, what if they found a way back?
Well, it's an adaptation of the video game franchise Mario, which started the Mario Brothers, which started in the 80s. Loosely based on Super Mario World, which was their first game on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, which was the next generation console, released about 1990, I think.
When did it hit UK? Because I remember I was alive then and a teenager at that time, a young teenager, and one of my friends had a Nintendo and had Super Mario Brothers game, and I used to go ring. I had a crap old Spectrum that this dude had a Nintendo of some sort. So I remember playing it incessantly when I was a kid. So what year was that? And I've got to say, when I watched the movie the first time, halfway through, I wasn't enjoying it very much. And I thought to inspire me, I'd go online and find a version of the game. I ended up playing that for 3 hours.
Which, of course, you were able to pay legally because you own a physical copy of the game.
Oh, it was somewhere online. Can we put the links in the on the website? I'll let you decide that one. You come back to me. You're our legal department. You come back to me on that one. But I ended up playing it, and I loved it. And in a sense, that was one of the things that helped me to love the movie, playing the game again.
So I think it was hitting the UK would have been the late 80s. There were. You're putting me on the spot here. I would have done some research on this issue. This is just sort of my background nerdiness about video game history. So there were some distribution problems, I think, with Nintendo in the UK, and it took a while for it to enter the UK market because of that. Even though Nintendo were dominating Sega in the US, it took a bit longer in the UK, and also with you mentioned the Spectrum. There was the vibrant home microcomputer video game industry on tapes in the UK as well, where it ended up in competition. So the NES sort of came in as a more expensive option compared to even the Master System, and then of course like the Spectrum and and Commodore were much more affordable, largely because, and also the games were cheap because they could be distributed on tape instead of these expensive cartridges and stuff like that.
Yeah, I remember, only certain people had the Nintendo, and you were very lucky if you had a friend who was one of
so
them.
I think sort of late 80s is when that would have been happening, unless they were particularly rich.
Well, anyway, all I'm saying is I was there and I remember it, and it was great.
Yeah, I remember playing it. It's similar. I think it was my cousins had it when I was playing it. Must have been about 3 or 4, and really liking it. And we just had we had an Amstrad CPC 464 with a green screen monitor, which was the cheaper one aimed at officers. And I was playing things like Dizzy, and it was absolutely nothing like Mario Brothers, but there was something really special about that. It really changed what platformers were. And then in the early 90s, you had the next generation of consoles, which had even better graphics. And then this film comes along sort of 3 or 4 years after that's hit, even in the UK.
So it's quite historic in one way. I think we both know what way, but I'll let you
it's the
say
first time anyone tried to make a film out of a video game.
Yeah, the first video game adaptation.
And it was not the last failure.
I mean, you've got kind of like the early Tron's earlier than this, isn't it? And it's kind of like they've got that idea, but this is the first adaptation.
Yep, absolutely. And believe it or not, until a couple of years ago, I think 2017, with the release of Detective Pikachu, it was the only adaptation of a Nintendo property. So yeah, it was a bit of an experiment, and judging by what was in the Wikipedia page, Nintendo saw it that way, sort of like as a low risk thing to sort of just see what happened. I guess a bit like the inverse of how licensing of films to video game companies in the 80s was happening, as something that didn't really put the film franchise at much risk.
Yeah, I suppose it's before the emergence even of the idea of transmedia, where you've got lots of different platforms and lots of different things going on. I mean, with Doctor Who, you had the TV series, and then the comics started in 64, but really in earnest in 79. Then it gets cancelled in mid 80s, and you got audios and books. So it's happening, but no one's really stood back and go, hang on, we can create worlds out of this in lots of different ways.
I think that concept comes even later. Certainly the first thing I can remember doing it and really being applauded for, wow, they're really trying to do this, was the Matrix sequels.
Yeah, okay, that's a good
So
point.
They released a game called Enter the Matrix for the original Xbox and PlayStation 2, which was critically panned, I think. It was an absolutely awesome game. I loved it. And that contained bits of story that you weren't going to get from the film.
And there were comics as well, weren't there, for Matrix as well? And
Animatrix. Yeah, there was like an anthology of different animated short films.
Like most things, the concepts come after it's actually come into being.
And I mean, it's worth focusing on this because it was a bit of an odd idea. Now, in general, historically, I can't think of many adaptations of video games that have been great successes. Certainly, the one that seems to have done the most well, I think, would have been the Resident Evil franchise. But I don't know anyone. I never played Resident Evil, but I don't know anyone who likes Resident Evil who tells me that the films were great. Although the first one was meant to be quite good.
Yeah, I've seen the films back, at least a couple of them back in the day, and I didn't abhor them. And I think I did play Resident Evil when it first came out.
The odd thing is, though, going the other direction, it usually works quite well. Not according to a law, but usually there has been a lot of success in converting films into video games, which started in the 80s. Although, having said that, there's also been a lot of failures. And the incident which caused the collapse of the Western video game market, our video game console market, with when Atari went bust, was because of an adaptation of a game based on E.T., where things went really wrong for them. There's documentaries about this, but basically they buried all of the cartridges somewhere out in the desert because they couldn't sell them. But it's sort of a bit easier to see how you would convert a film into a video game, because you just sort of say, well, it's a story, and then you create a game in which your player plays out the sort of is the main character or something like that, carries out that story, whereas the interactive element of a video game is never going to transfer into a film. So already they're at a bit of a challenge. And I mean, interestingly, it seems that they had a bit of a postmodern, in scare quotes, take on it. It's sort of designing it to be the film as though Nintendo had based the game on the film.
Well, yeah, that I think is a really good observation. I mean, the thing to start with there is really all they've done is taken the idea of characters, taken some kind of like ideas from it and tried to narrativize it in their own way. And in order to do that, they've drawn on intertextual on a number of things, I think. I mean, the most famous one is obviously Wizard of Oz. It's got a very kind of Wizard of Oz kind of moment. You know, I've got a feeling we're not in Brooklyn anymore, says Luigi, which is, you know, straight out of Wizard of Oz, what Dorothy says to Toto, but with Kansas. And then you got right at the end, you've got the bit with Luigi clicking his heels just before
I missed that. Well,
on the turbo boots. You know, like the red slippers, you know, we want to go home. So the whole film is kind of encapsulated within that moment. There's a Star Wars one, isn't there? That I've heard people talk about this one. You know, trust the fungus, which is kind of trust the Force, Luke, or use the Force, Luke, and that comes up. Trust the fungus a number of times. Interestingly, just on this fungus point, this is I think, the second best fungus film. The first one is a film called Performance from 1970 by Donald Campbell and Nick Rogue. Do you know this film?
No.
So it stars Mick Jagger. It's brilliant. And James Fox. Let's just say the mushrooms are of a very, very magical variety. Okay, so that's my favourite fungus film. And of course, Star Trek Discovery's very fungusy in its own way.
Spore Trek, as one of my friends wrestled it.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Probably somebody out there who's thought about all of this much deeper than we have. But I even saw resonances with Pink Floyd's The Wall. You know, like when all the Goombas are marching on the spot, there's a real wide shot and it goes back and there's metal. That reminded me of all the kind of kids or the concert goers all walking on the spot with those masks and faces on. You know, so I think it's drawing off a lot of culture and images and stuff like that in order to give it a bit of vitality and life that it can't at this point with a basic side-scrolling video game it just can't get from it.
And I think that's fair. It's a very filmic film.
It is.
Yeah,
it is
really clever stuff, groundbreaking stuff in a number of ways, which are just not really spectacular anymore. Even the Yoshi model, the people from Jurassic Park came over to have a look at that to sort of because like they found out somebody else is doing a dinosaur. Let's have a look at that. I think in the end they didn't hire the people who were working on it, but it was sufficiently advanced that the dinosaur film to end all dinosaur films was paying a close eye to the production. And there's loads of ways which we'll probably get into later where they have really tried to reference the original, the games and the original property that they're adapting in really nice ways. Like the most obvious one being like the finale between Cooper and Mario is on a bridge, which is in the original game. That's what those boss battles would be. You'd have to jump past Cooper in some way and grab the axe, I think it is, and then the bridge would disappear and Cooper would fall down. There's loads of like little moments in there. Dennis Hopper's performance is great, although
Dennis Hopper. Yeah. What's your favourite? I mean, it's mostly great. There's a lot of things said about this film that Rocky Martin, one of the directors, along with Annabelle Jankel, who did all the Max Headroom stuff. The late 80s. He called the production harrowing, and Hoskins said it was the worst movie he was in and really hated it. And him and Luigi had to get drunk every day before they came on set and all of this. And that Dennis Hopper didn't understand it. But there are moments where he is just absolutely phenomenal. My favourite is when he's ordering the pizza.
Yeah.
the way he delivers those lines is just wonderful. And there's a little callback to it a bit later on when it arrives late.
Don't know. I mean, I suspect sort of reading stuff around. I think they probably had a really difficult time on that film. There's no denying that. But I think maybe whatever the opposite of rose tinted glasses are, I think there's some really good performance. And Dennis, like, one of the big things is that he walks around with his hands up to his chest like he's a T-Rex. You're like pretending to be a T-Rex.
Well, Iggy and Spike, when we first meet them, they're kind of like pattering away like dinosaurs, sort of lizardy. They kind of lose that a bit when they go through the machine and get hyper intelligent. And well, I love them. I love the characters in it. I thought they were great. My favourite is Lena, Dennis Hopper's queen, Fiona Shaw. I thought she was brilliant with hair like Marge Simpson. Thought she was absolutely wonderful. So yeah, I love the roster of characters.
Absolutely, and it's a really intriguing world. I said the world building in it is really good. I mean, it doesn't give you a bunch of lore per se, but it feels like a really rich world with lots of things going on about it, and you wanting to explore it. It would be like the video game of the film would actually be really, really nice to play. That's really good. One where you could actually, a game based on the film with what Janet H. Murray calls encyclopedic extent. The ability to fully explore an environment in that, talk to people. That would be great. It's like Blade Runner.
I believe the set designer was the same set designer as from Blade Runner.
There you go.
That's a very good intuited moment there. I thought the mise en scène, I thought the way in which it was, the cars and the alleys and all of that stuff was just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
I just loved the mise en scène. I loved everything from the dirtiness of it, but it was its own world in a sense, like people sort of like, we did, what was it called? Fifth Element. And that kind of like broke a mold and created its own world. And I think this place does, you can't really refer it back to anything else. It really does create its own. It's got elements of Blade Runner, admittedly, but it's not got that kind of, smokiness to it. It's more really kind of claustrophobic and enclosed in a really visceral way. And I loved the idea of the posters for King Cooper up everywhere. King Cooper loves puppies, and King Cooper is an environmentalist, and King Cooper, so there was this kind of Western view of a Sovietness about it, so to speak. Reused cars. Cuba-esque, perhaps more than Soviet in that way, where things have been repurposed multiple times.
In terms of the world, not in terms of the film, it's in media res. There's so much story that's already happened. The deposing of the king, Daisy's father, and taking over. And why does he call himself president? If he's, what's going on there? Why is he electioneering? I mean, I did read that part of the intent there is that Cuba has like this sort of early on in the film, this sort of vision of what New York is in a couple of moments, and then tries to impose that upon the city where he's from to make it more like, that's why you've got the taxis that look a bit like New York taxis. And
we'll get on to the plot if you like later, but in other words, there's a pre-merging going on there. Yeah, that happens off screen for us. Whatever the intentions are for us, it happens off screen. But there is a sense, and there are big question marks over the similarities as well as the differences, of course. There. Yeah, that's really good. Mm-hmm. I suppose, other little bits I loved were, the dancing in the elevator scene. How awesome is that? And again, this
brilliant.
I just want to make this point, because I read somewhere that somebody was really upset that, is this how you're going to defeat them? Not with an epic battle, bringing in the game and all of that. I thought, no, this was really well thought through, and indeed becomes a pivotal moment to the downfall of King Cooper at the end of the film, when the dude starts playing his mouth organ. So it's not just there for an event. It's actually there as part of the structure of the plot. And the idea of dancing and rhythm and all of that just is actually throughout the film. You got that wonderful scene with Bertha and Mario, which is like from an old 1940s kind of Hollywood spectacular, you know, on a dance floor, which I thought was great. So that idea and that music. And then there's the bomb scene, which is just chef kiss.
Now what are we gonna do? I don't know what. Listen. What? Trust me. What are you?
Let's talk a bit more about how the film operates in itself, and and get a bit deeper on it. Yeah.
Okay.
Now we've kind of set some parameters. I mean, I want to say first off, for me, what I really liked about it, and we did a film recently where we were talking about a triple ending to a film. This had a triple opening, and I really like these things. So the opening, 65 million years ago, Brooklyn. That's just brilliant. I mean, that's resonating surely with 2001: A Space Odyssey. So they
Odyssey.
Move swiftly on.
Did you do that one on purpose?
No, I did not. And I have to purge myself of that somehow. We'll have to do the film or whatever. Anyway, look. So dinosaurs roamed the earth. Then something happened. A great meteorite struck the earth. Goodbye, dinosaurs. And I'm not going to do the Brooklyn accent. Yeah. But what if dinosaurs weren't all destroyed? What a brilliant setup. Yeah, I think that's wonderful, right? You've got this moment, and then you skip forward and you think the film, but no, we've got another opening, which isn't, if you like, the proper opening. It's Brooklyn 20 years ago, and you get this woman, nuns, the old classic scene. I think it's even in one of the Batman movies, isn't it? Leaving a baby on the steps.
Yeah, that would be Danny DeVito's Penguin.
Danny DeVito as the Penguin, absolutely. Yeah, so you got the nuns, the egg, the little baby with little bits of shell stuck to it. All of that kind of stuff, and then whoop, Brooklyn now, and this idea of the missing Brooklyn girls. Daisy holding up construction of Scarpelli's, going to put up a big building, another Trump-like figure, going to put up a big building, and him threatening her with these missing Brooklyn girls, and that being a bit of a red herring because, So the film's doing some very clever stuff with some setups there. So all of that setup's just brilliant, And I thought, what a great way for the movie to really quickly set everything up and put everything into play. And you even get in the very first opening seconds, it's kind of all pixelated like a game, and then it comes into view into the real world and all of this, that, and the other.
Did you see that?
Yeah. Do?
Yeah.
Oh. That's solid rock.
I got a feeling.
No, Luigi, forget it.
I gotta go with it.
Forget it, it's rock. Look down there. Luigi! I don't believe this.
So we've talked a lot about the hero's journey in this podcast, various different angles. And Super Mario is a really good example of it's often referred to by the idea of the hero's journey. You got the hero who's going through various different trials in order to save the princess. And the way that manifests in the game is you've got various different locations, each with a different theme. Start off with the sort of a green countryside area, and then never actually got very far. In Super Mario, because it's a really difficult game, but each of the underwater levels and other types of things, and this is a thing that carries through to all like Sonic and its competitor platformer games going forward. Now, I put it to you, Dave, that this film does the hero's journey like a platformer computer game rather than like a film.
It does the hero's journey like a platform computer game. I mean, look, when I first saw the film, I did think to myself, it's got a bit of that hero's journey, but I see what you're doing. You're twisting that slightly because, we could end up doing every bloody film like that. And after Jeff, I don't know how, a reference to a previous episode, listeners, look it up. Jeff on the
Arrival.
on arrival and the collective journey rather than the hero's journey. So can you unpack that for me? What do you mean it's got more of a gaming version of that in the sense that of what? It's more like a serial in a sense rather than an accumulation.
Yeah, I guess so. Its focus is on going to different places. The film dances around different areas, like how the game dances around different areas. And we start off this is one way in which it mimics the game. So it starts off in a kind of like a normal, what we would call normal. So it's New York instead of like it's in the countryside, but it's a normal place. Then you go underground into an underground level. You go through a portal which leads through a pipe. Then you're in the cityscape. Then they're inside a prison. They go to the skyscraper sort of area. Then they're out in the desert. Then they're coming back and they go to a nightclub. And then they go back to the main HQ, to the castle.
Yeah, I see. All right, I see where you're going with this, right? And each one's, in a sense, got its own little set of star that it's got to collect.
So it's a simplified hero's journey. Rather than the one where you need to go and fetch all the different things.
It's not drawing on archetypes or anything. Yeah, all right, I've got you. You're right. You're winning me over with this.
Yeah, it's a hero's journey where it is just about going to different places, less than meeting the archetypes and things like that. Because there isn't really anything that they need to defeat Cooper. There's no glaive.
No, but there's the bit of the meteorite. That's the key thing.
Okay, so that's the joke.
Which Bertha takes, and but even that is kind of like they don't. They chase her, but they don't really mind. It gets taken. They soon forget about it.
Well, what's interesting about that as well is that's really remains only ever in the power of Daisy.
Yeah,
which puts agency into the princess character, which usually isn't given there. It doesn't really belong to anyone else, and she's the only one who can use it. And it does actually kill the other character who tries.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. It doesn't. I mean, one of the big problems we saw with the classic hero's journey was, if you like, the passivity of the female characters. That was quite prevalent.
To a point where it's like even within the Mario games, it's become a bit of a joke. I can't remember which one it is. It's I think it might be New Super Mario Brothers 2. Which is a testimony to Nintendo's terrible naming scheme, where it sort of opens up and Princess Peach, I think it is taken away, and someone says, "Oh no, not again."
So what you're saying is the film is should be celebrated as a corrective, to that kind of like passivity of the female rescuing the princess in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when she comes back, like with the gun, sort of in that last scene, the sequel bait scene where she comes back and she's got like a gun and she's sort of all together. So I need your help, but it's not. I need your help because I've been kidnapped again.
No.
It was your mother's.
What do you know about my mother?
She was quite an inspiration. To some. When Cooper took over, she stole the rock and smuggled you to the other side. And she died.
What about my father? Is he alive?
It depends on what you mean by living.
What are you talking about?
Listen to me. I don't care whose daughter you are. Cooper thinks you're the only one who can merge the dimensions. I've waited too long to let all this slip away.
Thinking about parallel worlds, we've got here, there's lots of, what's the typology? The universe is infinitely large, and thus, with a finite amount of matter, there'll be reoccurrence, so stuff can crop up and repeat at different times and different spaces across the universe. Then you've got these, from string theory, these ideas of membranes and brains, and we're living on different surfaces, different big bangs, where our universe is the one out of the anthropic principle, and there's all these other universes which could repeat us, and some which have got different values, which would just pop out of existence straight away because they didn't have the oomph to create matter, and all of this, that, and the other. They're massively weird to get your head around.
Yeah.
But to me, the weirdest one of all is the idea of a universe that splits at every moment.
Yeah.
So, and this is one of the ways some metaphysicians of the really abstract variety get around the problem of free will by doing this. The universe splits at every moment. So when every choice you make is splits off in different ways. Therefore, you've retained the fact that there's a determinate universe, but also there are different choices that can be made, etc., etc.
Yeah. I hate that one, by the way.
But this is the one it's based on, and it's based on this. So,
but is it though? Because it's on...
No, well, it is. Hang on, let me just say. So, it's based on this one because what happens is there's the Earth, and suddenly, bang, a meteorite hits it. Yep, and this meteorite creates a parallel dimension. Now, the one of the more curious moments of this splitting of universes at every would be, and this is why I think it's the maddest of all. If you're going to go with that, you can't just put it down to a big event like a meteor hitting the universe. Yep. Is that the only time it splits, when there's a big, massive event? Well, no. Well, what about when somebody makes a choice to go left or right? That would have to be a split. But then you're going to have to keep going back, and there's going to be a recursion down to every cell in every human body there. So that's why I think it's completely mad. But anyway, this is based upon the idea of an event causing a split and the two parallel universes going away. Now, there's a lot of films out there that explore parallel universes and other media as well. You've got history of this kind of stuff, like Sliding Doors, for instance, from 1998, and Run Lola Run, I think that's the year after it, Tom Twyker. These films kind of emerge out of the avant-garde back in the 60s. Last Year in Marienbad is kind of got two characters who have got different memories of an event. Yeah, so they're kind of inhabiting different places at the same time, even though they're together. And one of my favourites is, and look, I suppose my favourite one is the Fringe series, 2008 to 13, Abrams and Kurtzman's Fringe, which I absolutely adore. And it's kind of like the X-Files has finished. Let's make something like the X-Files, but not with aliens, but with parallel worlds.
We don't say J.P. Abrams' name on this podcast.
I can. And I do.
Kurtzman's fine.
Python Pizza here, may I help you?
King Koopa here.
Oh, yes, sir.
I'd like the Koopa special.
Pterodactyl tail on that?
Yes. Dino, lizard, hold the mammal, no worms, and spicy.
You've got these ideas of parallel universes, right? And what's going on with parallel universes? You need to get between them and all of this, that, and the other. But what does this film want to do? And this is why I think it's an incredibly different from any other kind of parallel universe movie that's ever existed. It wants to merge them, which is the impossible with a splitting universe. Yeah, with a splitting parallel worlds. If you go with that phenomena, they split at every moment, and I mean, it's an evolutionary model, where things can't rejoin again. But it's got that moment where what you want to do is we've got these two different parallel worlds, and the whole plot is based around, and this got nothing to do with the game at all. And the whole plot, and it's mad as hell. The whole plot is about wanting to merge two parallel. Now, you tell me, have you ever seen a plot like that anywhere?
Not in film. Wanting to, I can't name, but in comic book form, the DC Crisis on Infinite Earths is the story of the merging of a multiverse down to one universe.
Ooh, okay, so there is a history there in the comics.
Yeah, so that's sort of like mid 1980s. It was their attempt to through a storyline sort of try and simplify their comic book universe to make it more accessible to new readers. So you start off with like an infinite universe at the beginning, and by the end of it, there's only one.
It's brilliant that you told me that, because that then takes us back to our point on intertextuality. Because there is a comic, obviously there's a comic book feel to this. Most certainly to me, in that second opening in Brooklyn 20 years ago, kind of like, it's all the cells of a comic, at certain angles, and then quick cuts to faces and the egg and all of it is almost like a laid out from a comic strip, that little segment. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that's where it's pulled that idea from, like the merging of universes. But it's pretty unique in film nonetheless. And I suppose the reason I mention this and why I talked a bit about the history of it is because the whole idea of parallel universes or parallel times and all of this, that, and the other is to explore a certain thing. Yeah. Choice And there's an incommensurability to a choice. Yeah. Once you have made a choice, once an event has happened, once you have gone one way, you can't go back. You can't go back and change it. You can't do anything about it. So all of these films in their own way, yeah, explore that, incommensurability of the three different universes, how they are completely and utterly different worlds, different outcomes. And isn't that phenomena deeply terrifying?
Phenomenon.
Phenomena.
As an aside, I've thought of another one, the Doctor Who weird Moffat series that everyone hated except us.
Oh, the Impossible Astronauts.
One. Where the finale of that has an Earth where everything is happening at the same time. That's a similar idea.
That is a similar idea. I mean, Groundhog Day, in a way, is a similar... Deleuze, in his cinema books, in Cinema 2 from 1985, he wrote 2 books on cinema, and one is kind of, if you like, on what we'd think of more classical films, and the other's kind of more disruptive. I'm trying to not use the word modernist, but let's use the word modernist films. He talks about a kind of filmmaking which has got the sign of what he calls peaks of the present. In other words, there are multiple presents all at the same time. He says narration will consist of a distribution of different presents to different characters, so that each forms a combination that is plausible and possible in itself, but where all of them together are incompossible, which is a word quoted. I think that's from Leibniz.
I can imagine Leibniz saying something like that.
As a film theorist, I don't need to worry about that. You do. But yeah, so there he's talking about presents, different presents to different characters. But he's talking about, films that give narration a new value because it abstracts everything from all successive action. In other words, you've got the different actions happening in different spaces. So what's happening, obviously, in the reptile world isn't really affecting what's going on in the human world. You've got these 2 different things. But this film is really interested in the interaction of those 2 incompossible worlds. And in a sense, taking it away from the art house avant-garde and bringing it into a mainstream film, not for kids, but, for multiplexes and, to enjoy big concepts. I mean, this is a big concept film, and I think that gets missed a lot. That's why I wanted to talk about this idea of the parallel worlds, that bring it into that. I mean, it becomes a film for thought about the choices we make and the different possibilities that life gives us. And indeed, what if, as they say at the beginning of the film, what if the dinosaurs continue to thrive and evolve into intelligent, vicious, aggressive beings, just like us?